All right, perfect. So everybody, welcome to our Impact Team training call today. And it's going to be about a topic that is almost, people are becoming more aware of it today, but I still think that it's almost unknown to the level that it should be. It's a topic where it impacts every single component of our health. We are actually more of these bacteria than we are human, and it's paradigm shifting when we think about health on how we should look at health and how our health impacts us. So today's topic is about the human microbiome. And why this is important to each and every single one of you is because, as I mentioned, it is multifaceted and impacts several components of our health, which I'm going to let Dr. Grant talk about. But I want to get right into introducing our guest today. So Dr. Lucas Grant is he did a PhD in microbiology, where his doctorate was in looking at the changes in the human microbiome from different functional foods like prebiotic fibers and polyphenols. And if you don't know what that means, we're going to talk about that today. So this guy is an expert in this space. His whole doctorate is in this space, and I'm really excited to get him on this call today. And before I introduce you, Dr. Grant, on talk about the human microbiome, you have a really powerful story on that. Before coming to Unicity a month ago as the principal scientist, whose role is to further research into our products, educate our customers and distributors, you were actually involved with another company, and something interesting happened there. So I'm just going to unmute you, and I'll give you the spot. So give me 1 sec. Hey, Dr. Grant.
Hi, Rav. How are you?
Perfect.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for taking the time today. So to start off our call, if you could share that story you shared with me about your previous company that you were involved with and what exactly happened there.
Yeah, so as I was talking to you about sort of this industry, and I worked for a company that was very big in making scientifically proven probiotics and prebiotic products with really great properties. But then it actually was sold to a large multinational company, and the focus was more around driving sales, and it wasn't really so scientifically based. So you're seeing that a lot in different sort of nutraceutical health product industries, where the science behind it might not be as strong as it once was.
And so why does that usually happen when a company goes, multinational or gets bought by a multinational company? Why does that happen, where the science disappears or gets diluted?
I guess the importance of the science behind a lot of the products, they also might be more interested in keeping a traditional product and pushing sales rather than really optimizing and creating that extra benefit for consumers.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So I thought that was powerful for each and every single one of you, because so Dr. Grant actually left that company and came on board to Unicity a month ago. But that just shows that there's so many products out there in the marketplace which may look good and they might have a lot of marketing behind it, but they're just diluted. And actually, there's a vegan supplement company which, so those of you that talk to me personally, I've told you about that. Used to sell an $80 tub of protein, and now they sell for $30 at Costco. And that's exactly another example of that. So let's get right into our topic today. What is the human microbiome? A lot of people don't hear about it. The media doesn't talk about it. How would you explain the human microbiome?
The human microbiome, for me, is this fascinating community of trillions of microorganisms that actually live inside you, but also on you. So there's actually a large segmented group of different microbiomes on your body. The skin microbiome is one of them, and probably the most famous and the most important to us is probably our gut microbiome. So there's all these bacteria and fungi that live in our gut and really help boost the extraction of nutrients and important substances that we need to really stay metabolically and immune responsive.
So these bacteria these bacteria, you'd say there's more, like I've heard, and it's all over Google as well, is that we have more of these bacteria than human cells. What's that mean? So like, why do we look like bacteria if there's more bacteria on us?
So our cells are actually made up, personally, like trillions of our own cells, and then it's estimated that there's up to 10 times more bacterial cells than our cells ourselves, and most of these are in the gut. It's actually at least 1-to-1 bacterial cell to our own human cell. So that's what really makes it so important, because there's this huge community there, and they have such a benefit for our health.
And so, well, like, what kind of benefits would they be?
So a lot of our own digestive enzymes that we produce can't actually break down a lot of this plant material that we eat, that we need the nutrients from it to really boost our health. So we predominantly break down sugars, fats, and proteins, but that real complex carbohydrates, our cells, we can't do because they're so rigid and very difficult to digest. So we've sort of incorporated this microbiome to support our health it's like quid pro quo, giving a favor for a favor. We're giving them a home and we're feeding them, and they're providing us all these nutrients and these beneficial factors for us.
Wow. So so we have to take care of those bacteria in order for them to take care of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have to provide them what they need, because historically we really needed them because food was more scarce, so we were relying more on this really fibrous plant material, and it's so difficult to extract nutrients from a lot of these sources.
And so actually that goes perfectly into my next question is, how has our modern lifestyle impacted our microbiome?
So the microbiome is actually affected by a range of different modern sort of environmental pressures, such as pollution, the medications we take. Antibiotics is a really big one. So a lot of antibiotics we take, though we need them for real medical needs, often they can be non-specific and they can really damage the microbiome that's there. So while they're wiping out the pathogenic bacteria, they also hurting the beneficial bacteria that's there as well.
Actually, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
There's also a large change in sort of the dietary patterns that we're having now in our more modern times. So part of having this huge population that we see in these massive cities, we have to have shelf-stable products. And part of that is they're very sterile and they're very highly processed, and they can be very antimicrobial. And a range of these preservatives can have an effect on our microbiome.
And what about so you're talking about like shelf stable, like processed foods that you find on the shelf, they have antimicrobial properties in them. So that means that they kill the bacteria as we eat them.
So for them to have a very long shelf life, they'll have preservatives to prevent any sort of organism growth that will damage the product itself. So, but when we ingest that can be transferred into our gut as well, and that can change our microbiome.
Wow. So you have all these people who are giving their children they buy their children $2,000, $3,000 car seats, but then they're giving their kids processed food, just killing all their microbiome. Actually, that brings me to another point is they say the microbiome is impacted from the moment we're born. Like, can you talk more about that? Like they say there's a difference from C-section and vaginal birth and even the way the kid is raised.
Yeah, that's right. We sort of, through birth and childhood, we sort of collect a lot of microbes that are in our environment through breastfeeding, and it really boosts the bacteria that's there. And then this becomes more stable in adulthood, but this can still be very much changed by the pressures, environmental and dietary pressures that are in our modern cities. So there's still some debate around the sterile environment of birth, and when exactly microbes are really collected for yourself. So some are saying that it's not until after birth, and then some are saying before birth. But it's really showing the importance and the changes in this field.
You mentioned something about sterile. So I know you've mentioned this on another call before. Is those of us that live in big cities like Toronto or New York or even Shanghai and Beijing, Singapore, have worse, more unhealthier microbiomes than, say, someone who lives in like rural India or rural Pakistan? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, exactly. So what we found is, so I talked about how modern diets have really changed, and the processed foods and this low nutrient content has really increased. So we're eating a lot of, we're eating less plant material, if you like, and more highly processed food. So what we've seen in research is that in rural areas that still have a more traditional diet, they actually have a different microbiome to those that are in much larger, more industrialized cities. But this has been shown that it's not just diet, but diet is probably one of the biggest factors affecting this. And the way that it has worked is that we've seen when people immigrate to bigger cities, their microbiome actually becomes more like the local environment through changes of these impacting factors. And so when we talk about the microbiome, one of the biggest things we talk about is the diversity of the bacterial members that are there. So that's a real marker for microbiome health currently. So the more species of bacteria you have in your gut, the more benefit you're going to have for yourself. But in the big cities, we're actually seeing a decline in diversity compared to these rural cities, which is really fascinating for the health, the correlation with the association with this health decline as well compared to our rural counterparts.
That's so interesting because my mom was born and raised in India, and she said many times to me that she'd never really heard of like allergies growing up. But she moved to Canada, and people have like, peanut allergies and seasonal allergies. Does that have to do with their microbiome as well?
Yeah, so we know that a lot of allergies are developed in the early stages of life, and there's a real strong link between the bacteria that's there in the gut and the allergies that you can develop. So if you think about the microbiome is sort of the first to encounter any sort of allergens and potentially pathogenic bacteria, and they have a real role in regulating your immune system. So they're really important in preventing that development of allergies in later life.
Well, so what, in terms of the immune system, I mean, everyone's focused on immune system these days because of COVID-19 and the whole situation. And I've heard you talk about 70% of our immune system is in our gut. Why is that? Or how does it work? Like, why is 70% in our gut?
So I guess we think about the gut as being inside us, and it's very safe and protected from the outside environment. But if you think about it's actually this long tube from end to end that food moves through.
You mean like from our mouth to the bottom? Like it's a long open tube.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's this long tube, and it's actually, if you think about it technically, it's sort of exposed to the outside environment because the food that you're ingesting, you've taken from the external environment as it moves through the gut. And there's actually a massive amount of external organisms that are coming through with that from our outside environment, potentially pathogenic as well. But the gut is actually very contracted, and the surface area, if you actually unraveled it all, the surface area of the gut has actually been estimated up to the size of a tennis court. So that's a huge amount of area that has to be protected from.
Wait, the surface area of our gut is, if you were to open it up, it'd be the size of a tennis court?
Yeah, so the gut actually it's very contracted, and it has this protrusions of villi that we call them. So this up and down actually increases the surface area for nutrient extraction. And that, if you actually had a look at the entire surface area of all those protrusions and everything uncontracted, it could be as big as a tennis court in size. So that's a huge area for the immune system to protect. and a massive area for to maintain integrity and gut health.
Wow. So, and then, so we have the majority of our immune systems there because it's the most exposed, you're saying. Like we eat foods with particles, or, today I was, over the weekend, I was cleaning the house, and, you spray Febreze and all that stuff. And I'm like, now I'm more aware. I'm like, got to keep my mouth closed. It's going to kill my microbiome. That probably plays a role too, right? Like pollution, these hand sanitizers and these antibacterial sprays. Would that impact your gut?
Yeah, that's right. Because so traditionally we lived in more like these rural environments. We were surrounded by the natural environment, and a good source of actual probiotic bacteria is there's a relationship with the soil microbiome. So we were traditionally very close to the nature itself, rather than these big cities that we live in now. And there's a strong relationship between these two microbiomes, if you like. In the gut, there's actually in the large intestine, especially, the oxygen there is no oxygen in there. It's actually depleted. The body keeps it very low in oxygen. That helps with the fermentation, the breakdown of this plant material that we need. And then there's actually an association with the soil microbiome, where beneath the surface there's actually much less oxygen as well. And there's a relationship between these two environments. And now, living in these modern cities, we're not exposed to this natural environment as much as we used to be.
So our soil health plays a role with our microbiome as well. Like I've heard a lot about soil depletion, soil health. There's articles that are showing we only have, I think, 55 years of soil left, because we're losing it at a rate of like a soccer field every 5 seconds. So the change in soil would affect our microbiome as well. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so we would have been exposed to those. This is more for talking about probiotics. So a lot of the natural beneficial bacteria that we would have collected ourselves in our environment would have come from plants and soils that we were exposed to. But now, living in these cities, we don't encounter a lot of this beneficial bacteria that we used to naturally.
Yeah, so that was like nature's way of giving us probiotics in the past.
Yeah, and there's a lot of examples of in nature of animals really protecting their microbiome. So a good one is cows actually have, to break down grass, they actually have to have a really good, strong population of beneficial bacteria, and they keep it in this area called the rumen in cattle. And it's actually sort of a closed system where the plants come in and the beneficial bacteria actually breaks down that grass so that they can really extract all those nutrients. And another good example in nature is rabbits. Actually, it's less of a closed system, and the microbes in their gut, so when they eat grass, actually break it down, but they actually lose a lot of microbes. They're excreted, but the rabbit will actually re-ingest these beneficial microbes to maintain that real strong population of beneficial bacteria to break down the food that it needs.
Is that why, like, I don't know if it's true or not, but they say like some animals eat their feces for that reason?
Yeah, that's right. That's why rabbits actually do that, to reintroduce the beneficial bacteria that they need, because they're from a cow, with the closed system to the rabbit is more similar to us, where they can lose beneficial bacteria through time, so they just re-ingest it to maintain that population. Whereas us, we were more exposed to the environment, moving around more. We were actually ingesting beneficial bacteria just in the natural environment.
Wow. So I want to go back to that point about our modern lifestyle for a second. So you mentioned antibiotics impact our microbiome. But you've mentioned to me before that even antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications impact it as well, right?
So with antibiotics, it can have this sort of non-specific target. So it can, when it's removing the pathogenic bacteria, it can also harm potentially beneficial bacteria. Of course, it's really required for real medical problems. But So it's really good to sort of boost that microbiome after taking these medications. And other medications can also, so if you think about the gut as like this dynamic changing environment, and a lot of prescription medications that we take can change the pH or the environment that's there, and this can then have a knock-on effect with the bacteria that's living there. So it's sort of just changing their home, if you like, while it's having an effect. While it's having an effect on us, it can also have an effect on the bacteria that's there, because they're also cellular organisms as well. A good one is actually a lot of people take these like antacids, a medication.
Like Tums and Pepsin and all that stuff.
Yeah, so these protein pump inhibitors, if you like, so they stop the stomach from excreting too much stomach acid, but they can actually have, I mean, they're very important if they're really required, but there's actually an overprescribed many instances of this medication, and this can have, these drugs sometimes can play a role and effect on the bacteria that's there as well, because they have similar mechanisms to a lot of our cellular structures.
Well, acid reflux is actually something that's very common these days. Is that related to the human microbiome as well? And based on your research or based on your expertise, is there really, do you know the exact cause of what's causing acid reflux in people these days?
So yeah, acid reflux can, depending on the individual, I guess, it can be very diet related, changing the bloating and the feeling of that regurgitation feeling. So there can be a strong link between the foods that we're eating and that real acid response that we're getting.
Okay, and another point I want to talk about is a lot of people rely on like energy drinks and coffee and all that for energy as well. But I've heard from you and just on podcasts as well, is that our microbiome actually produces energy for us. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so a real fascinating thing is, so we eat really good sources of this prebiotic dietary fiber, that we actually need this beneficial bacteria in our gut to break it down, and they produce these compounds, these beneficial substances that we use for energy. So a lot of the are called these short chain fatty acids, and they're really good for the energy requirements of our gut. In fact, the cells along that tube that I talked about, the gastrointestinal cells, actually 70% of their energy is actually derived from these short chain fatty acids that are being produced by this beneficial bacteria. And they're really important for maintaining health and maintenance of that gut area.
So talk about fiber. Let's actually talk about it. I know you've mentioned many times before, Dr. Grant, that fiber is one of the key ways to improve your gut microbiome. Can you talk more about that? Like, can someone take Metamucil, which is psyllium husk, or, in India, they sell this thing called isabgol, or a Fiber One cereal, or, maybe I should just eat a lot of oatmeal. Can you talk more about like, what kind of fibers and how fiber impacts your microbiome?
So fiber is one of the biggest impactors on the microbiome, because it's sort of the main source of energy that the bacteria uses. So the breakdown of this fibrous material is how they get their energy, and the products they produce, we can then in turn use ourselves. So that's really why fiber has such a huge impact on the gut microbiome. It's in terms of like the types of fiber and the real beneficial ones that should be taken, I really like to look back and see examples in nature. So when we talk about plants, they actually have these cell walls, and the plant cell wall is actually this really mixed matrix of fibrous material, all different types. And that's actually, in research shows that it has a huge impact on the microbiome in boosting beneficial bacterial members that are there. And it's really this diverse components going in will give you a more diverse growing microbiome. So a greater diversity of the bacterial species that are there. So when you have so I like to talk about your point, not all fibers are the same. So a lot of the fibers that when we talk about dietary fiber and food products, it's really based on that, just hitting that target of 25 grams a day for women and 38 grams a day for men. It's mostly based around just the regularity properties. It's not really looking at functional benefits past just reaching that target goal. So they can actually hit that goal with just having a single purified dietary fiber will come up as a good source of fiber. But in terms of the changes in the microbiome, it won't be as strong as having that diverse matrix of fiber, prebiotic fiber content.
So so what you're saying is we need a diversity of fibers in our diet. We can't just like take a single source fiber, or eat cereal which has a single source fiber in it and count that as our fiber requirement.
So the single source fibers, I guess each fiber could have a different beneficial outcome. So because there's thousands of bacterial species there, they will actually have a preference or the enzymatic capacity to break down the different fibers. So at the moment, scientific research is trying to link which bacteria has the preference for which prebiotic fiber or prebiotic substance. And this is really helping with the production of substances that they produce for our beneficial health. So it's really about currently that diverse diet will give you that diverse microbial population, and that will give you the greater chances of boosting your health.
Okay. And so, sometimes I'll get people say, okay, so great, I'm just going to eat a lot of vegetables, I'm going to eat a lot of fruits, eat a lot of whole grain breads, and I'll get my fiber for the day. Versus taking a supplement, a fiber-based supplement, specifically a multi-blend of fiber-based supplement. What's your thoughts on the two? What would you tell that person?
Well, first of all, like as I mentioned, I talked about these plant cell walls that are really high in nutrient and fiber content, and they're really this nature's version of this matrix of fiber, if you like. But if you think of fruit, for example, and a lot of vegetables, and when we do this analysis of the content, the nutrient content, a lot of it is in parts of the plant that are probably less desirable, that we probably wouldn't ingest ourselves, such as a lot of the skins of fruits are very high in these compounds compared to the fleshy part of the fruit that we would actually ingest. But also the concentrations, so to hit that 25 grams a day for women and 38 grams a day for men, you actually have to have quite a large intake of fruit and vegetables to really hit those targets and to reach that diversity that's required to impact your microbiome. So I guess it's about the consumption required can be very difficult to undertake in these times.
Yeah, especially with today's busy lifestyle. The last thing someone wants to do is start saying, okay, I got a quarter of an apple, third of a banana, some broccoli, some this. And even with that, I think you'll probably hit 15 grams max, right? And I mean, and then there's another topic about blood sugar spikes with like when you eat lentils and beans. That's a totally different topic we can talk about. But so talk about fibers. When someone adds fiber in their diet, or like, someone starts to implement a matrix of fibers, they start to experience bloating. Some might experience nausea, gas, like burping, or, farting, or they feel tired. They feel, why is that?
Did you say with the lack of fiber, or when they introduce?
Once they start, like, I'll recommend someone either a live fiber or a balance, and they start getting like bloating and gas and burping and farting, and then they think the product's not working, and they stop it.
So
what would you say on that?
So when we think about them, okay, so we think about the microbiome as a community, a really strong community that lives in your gut, and it actually changes with time with different environmental pressures. And as I mentioned, the diet is one of the biggest influences of the microbiome. So if you think, say for 10, well, even for a few months, you've just been eating this really highly processed food, the bacteria that's there will have adapted to being what's being supplied. So it'll change to what you're giving it, it'll adapt to. So when you introduce fibers, there will be an adjustment period as the microbiome community actually shifts to be able to more efficiently break down that fiber component. So some of your original microbiome might have been could be responsible for producing the bloating or the excess gas from maybe some of the free sugars that they're getting access to. But as the more beneficial bacteria population increases with this fiber intake, it'll sort of change the community, and you'll actually get a more long-term health benefit, if that sort of answers the question. So there's a shift that takes place in the composition of the community that's there, and this will suppress these symptoms that sometimes you feel when you first introduce it after a long period.
So what you're saying is that when we add these matrix of fibers, we don't have the bacteria to break it down and digest it. So as our body's building up these bacteria, we start feeling this uncomfortableness of bloating and gas and stuff, right? Is that what you're saying?
So as when you introduce it, the composition of the microbiome needs to adjust to be able to break down that fiber. So the uncomfortable symptoms might be from the original bacteria that you already had that was there, but that will be reduced as you keep ingesting this beneficial prebiotic fiber. So there's this compositional adjustment, if you like, and that can take.
Okay.
And it optimizes the breakdown of these fibers and really adjusts to the change in the diet. I like to think of it like as the birds flying in a V formation. So each of the bacteria optimizes energy utilization for the next one. And a lot of the bacteria that's there, they work together. So some will initially start breaking down the fiber, and they'll produce beneficial products that different bacteria in a chain will use. And this takes an adjustment period to really become accustomed to this change in diet.
And how long could that take for someone? Like a week or a month or a year?
Yeah, for each individual, it's quite different. And I like talking about that. So between us as humans, there's actually less than 1% difference between us genetically. But between our microbiomes, there can actually be up to greater than 60% difference between our two microbiomes.
So our human genes could be less than 1% different, but what differentiates us is our bacteria.
Yeah, exactly. So
genetically, if fiber, my genetics are more superior than yours.
So there's this huge variation between people in terms of their microbiome. So it's difficult to say the exact time frame for each people, but it can adjust. Research is showing us within sort of 7 days, but it can be longer for some people, and it really depends. Because each individual will be different, they would have been consuming different foods for a long period of time. So the adjustment period can be really unique to the individual themselves.
Amazing. So as we wrap up our call, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put in the chat box for Dr. Grant. But, just to recap, we talked about what the microbiome is, how our modern lifestyle impacts it, how it affects our health, such as our energy levels, our immune system, even our metabolism. And one way we can improve it is fibers. Now, because we're running out of time, we didn't get a chance to talk about polyphenols and probiotics. But next Tuesday, we'll have Dr. Grant back, and he'll actually be talking about the specific unicity formulations, like the live fiber and the probiotic plus and the bio 7 and the balance, on how they work to improve our microbiome. So just as we wrap up our call, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put in the chat box. And if in the next 15 seconds or 20 seconds, there's no questions, then yeah, we'll wrap up our call. And I just want to thank you for your time, Dr. Grant. I think that was amazing. I appreciate, you stepping out of your comfort zone, me putting you on the spot, asking these questions. I hope it was valuable for everybody. And we'll see you back again next Tuesday, talking about the specific products. one question is, where do the new bacteria come from when you start to increase the diversity of fiber? Like, how do we get bacteria?
So a lot of the community, they'll be there within you, but when you start introducing the fiber, you increase the number of bacteria that is. So the growth of that particular species will increase. But sometimes this is like probiotics is a good example of reintroducing beneficial bacteria to really boost that community.
Which we used to get from soil back in the day.
Yeah, that's right. So about in terms of this question, when you introduce the fiber, the certain communities that will be required to break down will actually increase. So maybe they were there, but in very low numbers. And then when you start to take this more beneficial diet, they'll increase. So that group will become bigger.
It gives them armor to take over and become stronger based on their diet.
And then that decreases. So if you think about it,